and welcome to New Retirement Thinking. Well, keeping with the housekeeping theme of the past 2 weeks on the show, today we're going to take a look at what tweaks, if any, you ought to be making to your retirement portfolio in 2010 and what you need to bear in mind when building your financial plan. And with me in studio this evening is Gerrit Viljoen. He's the CEO of Ultima Financial Planners. Gerrit, thanks very much for joining us.
That's a great pleasure, Julieta.
Gerrit, firstly, how do you actually define a strategy when it comes to your retirement funding? What should you consider? What are the most important things?
Well, I think it's such an important and emotional issue. Now, just before we get to that, if you look at statistics today, when I started in the industry in 1983, the statistics were still 6% of people could afford to retire. And unfortunately today it's the same. Now we find that, people say people need access to information, they need the internet, they can get all the information themselves. But we find that people, even though they can get all of those things, they make big mistakes. And so when you engage with a financial planner, the first steps would be for him to understand where you are today and where you want to be, what you want your money to do for you, what you want, your lifestyle you want when you want to retire, be it at 60 or 65. It's very important to know what that picture must look like. Because I, as a financial planner, I can't define that for you. So that's the first process, making sure you absolutely know what you want from your strategy. And then you can proceed from there.
But obviously the first step entails having a financial planner, because we were talking about this issue on the show last week, and we're saying, there is a lot of information out there, as you've just said. Some of it is perhaps not comprehensible. Sometimes you do make mistakes. Would you say it's not wise to go this course alone?
Well, I believe there's people out there that can go it alone. We've seen that they can. I would say about 80, 85, even up to 90% of people can't go it alone. Especially because when things are going negatively, especially on the markets, people don't know what to do. They actually destroy their own wealth. Now we've seen in studies done overseas and in South Africa that funds did exceptionally well over time, but investors did poorly. Now how's that possible? It's because they second guess. They set out and they decide on a fund manager because they think this fund manager can do it for them in the long term. And we find that after a while they think, no, the markets have declined, I need to jump out, I've got to wait until things get better. And that, as a strategy, will destroy wealth over time. So we see markets have done exceptionally, but investors have done poorly. So definitely they need people to guide them, to take them by the hand, and to set up a blueprint or a strategy for them.
But Gerrit, surely sometimes financial planners get it wrong too. So what should they do and what shouldn't they do, and what do you as an investor need to watch out for? I mean, what kind of advice should you be getting from your financial planner, and what should you be a bit wary about?
I think it's very important just to say that studies have also proven if you have somebody that guides you, that help you, you will exceptionally do better in the long term than not having anybody. But be it as it may, that person should actually sit down with you, define your goals, and then set up a blueprint that you understand. Because at the end of the day, you must make the call whether you want to proceed or not. So you've got to understand what he's doing, and that's why it's so important for him to understand you as a person. You can't engage with a financial planner and he's got something to sell you. I mean, that's not financial planning. So he's got to find out what defines you, what do you want to do with your money, what must that money do for you, and then he must start, he must put down the plan, the blueprint, and then that will entail the asset allocation, how long your money must last. And I think a very important thing, many people think they should plan for 5, 10 years. But if we're talking about retirement, we're talking about a new retirement thinking, I mean, that could be long term. But it could be a guy 5 years from retirement, and he might see his retirement age 60 or 65 as the final date. So it gets to that date, and then he must choose a new strategy for his money in retirement.
So you're saying long-term is the key here, but often long-term is not long-term enough in the minds of many people and possibly financial planners.
Unfortunately today, I mean, with our society that we're in, people think long-term is 6 months. Now, unfortunately, that's not true. If we're talking about retirement, if you're talking about having enough money to live a lifestyle that you want to live up till the age of 95, normally long-term is 30 years and longer, because even if you're at the age of 60, your money must still last until the age of 95. And that's an exceptional long term. So if we're talking about long term, normally you would have more equity in your portfolio, because we've seen that it's actually only equity in the long term that will beat inflation. Because inflation would be the retiree's biggest enemy. If you can't beat inflation consistently over time, I mean, you will destroy wealth again, and you will be poor at a time when you can't afford to go back to work.
So on this point of long-term thinking, an incident or a year such as the year that we've had, which has been very volatile, 2009, in absolute terms actually produced great returns on the stock market, but the first part of the year didn't. Would that just be a blip, and one shouldn't then react overly aggressively towards a year such as what we had last year, if your investment horizon is still 20 years to go or 30 years to go?
You see, that's so important, because unfortunately people, they read the papers, they go on the internet, they get information, and people say, oh, it's not the time to be in equity, oh, you should have been in bonds now, you should have been in the money market. And in fact, if you have a short-term strategy, that possibly could be right. But if you're looking at it at a long-term, with a long-term perspective, obviously you will set out with a strategy that will take you there over the long term. And the long term means 5 years and longer. So definitely no switching out or switching to cash and stuff like that, because we find people might switch out at the top of a bull market, but they're too afraid to get back into at the bottom.
So Gerrit, is there anything though that we should be doing this year that's different to
that? Because we find people might switch out at the top of a bull market, but they're too afraid to get back into at the bottom.
So Gerrit, is there anything though that we should be doing this year that's different to what we've done previous years? Or if you've built a retirement portfolio already and you still have this long-term plan, do you need to tweak anything, or should you stay the course?
Well, obviously you always have to assess whether this portfolio that you've got will still take you the long term. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't tweak your portfolio, but definitely you shouldn't be jumping in and out on a short-term basis trying to get extra value in the market, because we've seen that equity will take you the long term. So if you, with the right managers, if you're the right strategy, it's very, very important to stay the course. It's actually very important not even to look at your retirement investments over a short period of time. Now, I know it's difficult. I know people, they've got access to the internet and they can actually access that on a daily basis. And that is wrong, because now the market is down, their values are down 6%, and they say, Gerrit, don't you think we should switch to the money market? No, we've got a blueprint for 30, 35 years. And every year you should sit down with your financial planner to see whether that strategy still meets your needs in the long term.
So Gerrit, last question, unfortunately we've only got about 30 seconds for it. The most important things to consider before and after retirement, what are they in your view?
Well, interestingly enough, I think before retirement you should maximize your wealth, and that would be you should have more equity in your portfolio that you might even think at this point in time. Unfortunately, in retirement now you need an income, and you've got to get a structure that will provide that income as well as capital growth. So you will also need more equity in your portfolio, as we see people are comfortable with. And that's where the financial planner comes in, to design that strategy that will give you what you need and not what you particularly might want, because you might want to be in a money market, but that will not stay the long term.
Okay, unfortunately we have to leave it there, but very interesting, and thanks very much for coming to speak.
Thanks, Julieta.
That's Gerrit Viljoen.